All right, the Yankees won 8-4 on the road in Texas against the Rangers. They spoiled Jack Leiter's outing, and of course, Anthony Volpe got a little bit going there. Those two guys are friends and everything. Fun day, obviously. A lot, happened. The Yankees had 12 hits total. They put together 8 runs. We saw a great outing from Gerrit Cole. And we're really excited to talk about Jazz Chisholm in this one, specifically him and Gleyber. So, Gary, happy to be back. This is the 127th episode of Yankees Unloaded.
Yeah, Jake, this is a great game. I was actually watching this game walking around the mall, and I just remember thinking that I really need to see Garrett Cole show that he's Garrett Cole. That's what I need. And long story short, of course, we got that. Nothing to worry about. It was a calf strain. Not a calf strain. It was not a calf strain. This was a cramp, okay? So let's be clear. Garrett Cole is not hurt, okay? Right. Luis Hill just got hurt. He's coming back. Garrett Cole, he looked like Garrett Cole today. It was the strikeouts, one walk. I mean, that's what we want, right? Locating your fastball. We'll kind of dive deeper into that. But Jake, I know we have a mailbag, and this thing is long. This is a scroll. Something out of Elden Ring. So, yeah, it's something out of Elden Ring. So why don't you go ahead and read that thing?
We got 2, and one of the 2 is a 2-parter. All right, let's start it off with LI Kid, which is a little bit shorter, as in a lot shorter. Okay. Now, if you're going to do a mailbag, just remember you got to put all uppercase letters mailbag. Otherwise, we can't guarantee we're going to see it. But I was able to see this one. So, LI Kid, this one's for you. The Yankees are 39-39, typing this before game 1 against Texas, so 40-39, since June 1st. We've seen time and time again them fizzle out in the second half of the season. What/who do you think is the main reason behind consistent average/below average play in the second half over the years? I think this is a great question. I think it can be answered. It's a combination of Aaron Boone and it's a combination of Brian Cashman. I think Boone's managing is so much better at the beginning of the year. And I think, he has his moments, but I think I find myself more often critical of Aaron Boone and his managing decisions later on the year. And with Cashman, it's the same thing. I mean, it seems like almost every year they need to call up a certain guy and they're just sitting there waiting for the call up while the team is trotting out lesser talent. Last year, not really the case, but they weren't playing for anything. 2022, to be fair, they did call up Peraza and Cabrera, which kind of changed the tune. But yeah, I think it's a combination of those. I would say Boone. I lean Boone is the most likely reason for that.
Okay. I completely agree with you, and here's why. Before, I would say the first week this show came out, right? We had a couple hundred listeners, and they were reliable listeners, right? And people will tell you that we said this. My biggest gripe with this Yankees organization, it wasn't the fact that they try and hit a bunch of home runs and strike out and walk. It was none of that, right? It wasn't the fact that they didn't go out and get Blake Snell. It wasn't the fact that they didn't go get a closer. No, Jake, do you remember what it was? It was the fact that these starting pitchers don't go innings. And the reason I think this matters is that while you might look at a team's ERA down the stretch, you say, oh, well, starting pitching ERA, we give up a certain amount of runs. So you look across baseball and say, well, we give up less runs in all these different teams. We must have a better pitching staff. And that's where I say, hold the phone, because you may give up less runs, but at the end of the year, how many innings did those starting pitching go? Like, what did they do? And if you look at it, I brought up the long-term numbers of Nestor Cortez. I brought up the long-term numbers of Marcus Stroman. Rodon, Heel had never gone innings. Garrett Cole always had. So you look at this situation and say, what does the team look like in the second half of the year? Well, the best way to get good in the second half of the year is to have a starting pitcher pitch innings consistently. Why? Because it saves your bullpen. That's why. So it's my belief that the reason the Yankees are such a strong first half team is because they rely on their bullpen. And let's be clear here. I believe the injuries, and this may sound weird to you, Jake. This may sound weird to everybody. I believe injuries to guys like Gerrit Cole, Luis Heel, Clark Schmidt, and Cody Poteet. I believe these guys will be more fresh probably heading into October than they've ever been. So while I never wanted to see injuries, I always wanted to see Gerrit Cole out there in May. But the fact that he missed a couple months may actually be to our benefit. And I think that may help us be a little bit stronger in the second half than we usually are.
I think you mentioned it the other day about Rizzo. And I think I would say Stanton. No one talks about it. Nobody. Fact that Stanton was able to get back on the horse, playing at the level he's playing at, over 800 OPS, have 25 home runs, which he hit tonight, 10th time of his career, by the way. And the fact he's able to do that, and he just hasn't really had much of a drop off. I mean, it's really impressive because the guy only swings the bat. He doesn't even play the field. And, some people can say, oh, well, that just makes his job easier. I actually disagree, because if your bat isn't working, you don't have anything to fall back onto. It's kind of the same thing with like Ohtani. I give Ohtani flack for being a DH and not playing the field when he's athletic as he is. But at the same time, it's like it puts more on his plate to succeed at the plate. So
yeah, there's more pressure for sure. And you have to deliver. If you're not delivering, well, then what is your value? So yeah, completely agree.
So I like that you brought that up. You brought it home. I think the common denominator here with Boone is that he overuses the bullpen. And it's very similar to what you were saying. I mean, I think that's why they struggled down the stretch. I think, these guys are exhausted. I mean, it feels like they use Luke Weaver almost every other day. And that's a lot.
They did talk the talk, by the way. When we listened, because we don't talk, we don't have him on our show.
Yeah.
But Aaron Boone told us, with Clay Holmes, we actually have a target number of how many times we want to use this player throughout the season. Now, he's saying this because he knows in years past, I've overused these guys. And clearly, no matter what your win-loss record is in the regular season, if we get to October, you can win 112 games. But if your closer's burnt out and your 3 through 5 is completely stretched out and they're not ready to pitch, well, guess what? You're going home in October. That's the way this game works. You need to be the best team in October, not the best team from May to September. That's not the way this works. You need to be consistent in the regular season. The best way to do that is to get innings from these guys, your starting pitchers. So I wanted to give credit to Aaron Boone early in the season. I thought he did a much better job of stretching guys like Marcus Stroman, right? A lot of these guys, Luis Heel was going deeper into games. It was helping our bullpen. And long and behold, you look at our bullpen ERAs, they were the best they ever were the first half of the year. Why? Because the starting pitching was great. So yeah, Jake, I think that's the answer that we're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I think you look at, like, for instance, Luke Weaver, and we'll answer this next mailbag from Ed W. But real quick with Luke Weaver, he has 73 innings pitched this year. Mm-hmm. So in his career, the only time he's ever surpassed that was last year, 97 innings. Mind you, he gave up 125 hits. He's only given up 48 and 73 this year. So much better pitcher now. And then before that was 136 and a third back when he used to start in 2018.
Okay.
So he was actually a starting pitcher for St. Louis. He started 25 games with 7.11, 4.95 ERA. So, I mean, this is a guy that they've really, gotten a lot out of. My concern is overusing these guys, and that's what I'll say. But moving on, we got 2 questions here. So from Ed W. So appreciate you guys, obviously interacting. Wanted to get your thoughts on one more Boone decision from yesterday that you did not cover. Aaron Boone has been Mr. Righty/lefty split man. I love that. But Jordan Walker and Brendan Donovan absolutely slayed the Yankees yesterday and the rest of the series, both lefties. Now, I get that. One, Canely is Boone's guy, and for good reason. He was in the middle of a scoreless inning streak. And 2, he has pretty good numbers against lefties. But if I am reading the StatCast data correctly, the entire Cardinals lineup is a career 0 for 14 against Tim Hill lifetime, including Donovan, who was 0-2 lifetime. And with a runner on at the time, Hill is more likely to get the ground ball double play out of Donovan than Canely, and maybe more likely to get Jordan Walker. This just seemed like the obvious Mike Stanton moment to me, on even more obvious Tim Hill moment, where you want to keep the ball on the ground against two consecutive lefties and Lars Nootbaar, who Hill would have faced if he didn't retire too. And yet they brought in a righty. Could apply similar reasoning to Efros in the fifth, as Hill had faced Goldschmidt once and got him out, and Donovan was due up third in the inning. So that's a lot. But I guess, you're kind of asking why they didn't bring in Tim Hill. I have no idea. I'm giving you a gold star for bringing up all that, though. That's some homework, and we here at Yankees Unloaded really appreciate that.
Yeah, this dude is doing his research. I wasn't thinking about that. But again, this is all about feel. And of course, the Yankees want us to believe that they're a team that believes in analytics and also feel. They combine them both, because I think that's the perfect, most political answer you can give, is that you love analytics, but we don't make decisions simply based on analytics. Well, in that situation, the analytics would point to Hill. But the Yankees very clearly, and they said this at the deadline, they were looking for guys who can miss bats. Well, Tommy Kahnle can miss a bat. So that's what I'm sure they were looking for. And when he walked off the mound, having struggled clearly, well, everyone struggled yesterday, but it was a shock. It was a surprise to see Tommy Kahnle giving up contact the way we saw it. So if that had worked, I don't know necessarily that I blame them for not necessarily going towards not the splits necessarily, but what the numbers long-term said about each pitcher. I feel like when you have a pitcher that has success consistently, you don't necessarily look at numbers like that. And the best example do you remember AJ Ellis when he used to hit against Mariano Rivera?
Yes.
And for whatever reason, Mariano could never get him out, ever. I don't know why. It drove me up a wall. He was hitting homers off the foul pole. Every ball he swung at seemingly was a bad thing for the Yankees. Now, having said that, when you look at those numbers, you would never say, hey, guys, AJ Ellis is coming up. We're going to go away from Mariano Rivera. You just wouldn't. And the Yankees never did that, not once. And that's, I believe, the right decision. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying about Hill. I go with pedigree and how good a pitcher is. I think that matters too.
Yeah, I had no issue with Kahnle. I will say, to defend Ed here, this is what happens when you openly embrace analytics. So much so, you're the team. You're labeled as one of those analytically driven teams. People are going to pull up the analytics and be like, what are the analytics you're looking at? Because I'm seeing that you should have gone this way. And I guess that's always the case, but you open up a can of worms when you go this direction. Number two, Juan Soto seems off, a bit lost and maybe a bit run down. I think it was you guys who said he changed his swing after hitting 3 homers, but it might be that Soto needs a day off or a reset. Part of my job is to read people's demeanors, and Juan Soto seems a bit out of sorts, like someone who could clear his head a bit. That is Ed W. Can I agree. Answer this? I actually agree. I do feel like Juan Soto looks a little off, even today. This is before today's game, right? But I do feel like he doesn't quite look like his confident, comfortable, happy-go-lucky self lately.
Yeah, no, I agree. But let me say this. We are 80-58. It is, by the time you're watching the show, it will be, if you're watching it late night, it's September 2nd. But if you watch it the following day, September 3rd, it is September baseball. We are half a game ahead of the Baltimore Orioles. There is no sitting Juan Soto. I understand what people are saying.
No, I agree.
About the concept of sitting down a player, allowing him to recuperate, get a reboot, and then come out and be the Juan Soto we all know and love. But guess what, guys? The time for that is not now. It's just not. I get it. I agree with the concept, but we're probably going to see that from lesser players like tomorrow, right? Austin Wells was 0 for 4 today. The previous day, he was 0 for 5. So one would suggest, okay, he's 0 for his last 9. He's been struggling a little bit for 2 days. He got hit in the hand. People were worried about it. the Yankees can suggest a player of Austin Wells' caliber, who is still a very good player in this league, he can get a day off. But when you're talking about Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, you take Juan Soto out of this lineup, our lineup looks completely different. I absolutely, this is the reason you pay Juan Soto and Judge the type of money you pay them, is because not only are they high output players, but they also have the ability to say, hey, I think he needs a day. And then you just put him in there anyway. So yeah, I just absolutely just deny the concept of giving him a day off. He's just got to play through it. And obviously today, I mean, he had a pretty nice day, so we'll take it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you guys. Field level shout outs go to Juan Cepeda, Kid from LI, Carlos Marrero, Jeff J, Ed W, Brian Fuchs, Ryan Hoffman, Rich Squires, Joshua Halleckman, Egyptian Magician, and Nick Gomes. Appreciate you guys. If you want to become a member, hit the join button or check out the link in the description and the comment section below. Let's get into the show. Took a little bit there, but we got through everything. Jazz Chisholm, 24 games as a Yankee. He has 19 hits in 24 games. He has more than 19 hits, but he's literally had a hit in 19 of those 24 games. Really impressive. 10 multi-hit games for him. 10 out of 10 was stolen bases. This guy's been an absolute star. And to be honest with you, Gary, this is when I said I envisioned Jazz being a star in New York.
Right.
This is almost exactly what I expected. It's not really that he was never capable of this. He was always capable of this. It's not like he's playing out of his mind. I think he's finally, for the first time in his career, playing up to his potential. It's that simple.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's fair for you to say, because I mean, we're talking about a decent sample size here. I mean, his last 15 games, that's not nothing. That's 55 at bats. He's hitting 382. His on base is 414. His slugging's over 700. Yeah. So let's actually break down what Jazz Chisholm is doing, because remember when he came to this team, we both agreed, and a lot of our audience agreed, this is a very good fit. Now, the Yankees were pretty underwhelming at the deadline, but this was non-negotiable. This was great. Okay. Now, you said you could see him being a great player, like a superstar. Maybe not on the level of a Juan Soto or Aaron Judge, but something a tier down. And to which I actually disagreed, but here's the catch. I said he needs a star in his role, and that role was to get on base. He's going to get his hits. That 245, 250 career average, that's not going to cut it. We need something like 270 to 275, somebody who can get a knock when he needs it, but he can drop down a bunt. He uses the speed game. He needed to be, as I put it, a star in his role. Jazz Chisholm, this version that we're getting right now, he's playing like a star. He's taking over games. He is impacting games in ways that don't have to do with putting the ball in the seats, and that's something the Yankees don't have enough of. Personally, I think the Yankees need more players like this. Not necessarily more players hitting 400, because obviously everyone wants to hit 400, but players that are playing with this intent. You're going to play me to pull, I'm going to slap a ball to third base. You're going to pull me to go opposite field, I'm going to make a quality out to the right side of the field. You're going to allow me to take a walk, I'm going to steal second and third. The Yankees don't play baseball this way. Jazz Chisholm does. But guess what? Jazz Chisholm implemented into this lineup changes the way the Yankees play. It changes the way that you can go about your business in October. Every time you watch the Yankees play October baseball, how do they beat us? It is pitches in the zone. You get ahead of the Yankees, hard breaking balls down and away off the plate, and they are chasing pitches, and you're just waiting for somebody to run into a hanging breaking ball or a fastball middle to go dead center field at Yankee Stadium. And you're wondering, how long am I going to wait for that to happen? Well, guess what, Jake? When you watch some of the best pitching in Major League Baseball, very few power hitters in the game are you going to wait to be successful in October. But guess what? Jazz Chisholm, remember Marco Scutaro? I brought that up in the Giants series, right? Pablo Sandoval, a lot of those names, those aren't power hitters in the game, but they had a huge impact in the Fall Classic. Why? Because they're contact players. That's why. We needed this. That's what it is. Does it mean Jazz Chisholm's here, so we're just winning the World Series? No. But he objectively is what's right about the lineup outside of Soto and Judge.
Yeah, I love Jazz. I love Jazz. I don't know, man. I love watching him play. Kind of just all over, right? You know, you talk about what he can do on the base paths and, you know, his ability at third. And yeah, he's had some errors over there. It's the growing pains of never playing a position before. And I just think I don't know who has been a better, in say the last 10 years at the deadline, who's been a better pickup than Jazz Chisholm, because you can talk about Gleyber Torres long term. That was a great pickup. The Yankees basically sent away Aroldis Chapman and in turn got Gleyber Torres, who ended up being their second baseman of the future. He's played second base for them for what, 6 years, 7 years? So that was a great move back in 2016, right? And they've gone out and they've gotten guys, you know, in the past. They went out, I believe Rizzo was a deadline deal. Right?
He was, yeah.
So Rizzo, back in, I think, 2021, they got Clay Holmes, who we'll be talking about later on the show.
Project from Pittsburgh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he turned into, you know, a stud, you know, for them to be able to be a closer from what he was. They got J.A. Happ, who was surprising, ended up being somebody that they wanted to bring back the following year. Zach Britton. They've gotten a lot of guys in the past. They, you know, I mean, there's so many names that I'm not even remembering right now. But I will tell you, I think Jazz Chisholm is the total package, because Jazz Chisholm, you're getting a guy who can be a star. You're getting a guy with star potential. You're getting a guy that has 2 more years of control after this year, meaning he's not a free agent until 2027. Okay. So you factor that in. You also factor in the fact that he can fill a role that he didn't even know he was filling. When they acquired him, I don't even think they knew they were playing him at third base. They kind of just like, yeah, just do it.
Maybe that's what worked too. Maybe that's what we needed. We needed a player who was going to come in here. And remember, the last time we won the World Series, a player at some point or another had to check his ego and say, yeah, I'll go play third base.
Yeah.
And here we are. This is no Alex Rodriguez. Jazz Chisholm will never be A-Rod. But the catch here is that somebody had to check that, right? Who's playing second base? And Gleyber Torres said, I want to play second base. I'm a second baseman. Okay. Jazz Chisholm, what are we going to do with you? I'll play third base. He's just the type of guy, he just seems free out there. Now, obviously, when a player's making errors at third base and you're covering that, they don't seem as free. But you know what? When you swing the bat like this, and let's not forget the vote that he won. And this isn't a good vote. This is a vote amongst the players as baseball's most overrated player. He won that vote. Now, some people view this, and I know, Jake, we've talked about it privately. You hate it, but let me actually say this. I don't hate it at all, and I'll tell you why. I think Jazz Chisholm knew from the get-go, when I'm spending my time here in Miami, the reason you're seeing the player that you're seeing is because I'm here. There are a lot of players in Major League Baseball like that. There are a lot of players in other sports like that. Oh, if I wasn't playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns and I was in New England the way Tom Brady is, I would play like Tom Brady too. Now, a lot of that's not true, but some of it is. Sometimes a change of scenery matters. And Jazz Chisholm in Miami was not living up to expectations. He was not living up to any signing bonus you're talking about. He was hitting 250 and hitting 20 homers and hiding in the outfield in Miami wasn't going to get it done. And baseball essentially put him on blast for it. Well, guess what? He shows up here to New York. It was the change of scenery he needed. And now we're looking at a player. I'm not comfortable calling him a star, but I will say this. In October, you're not going to pitch to Jazz Chisholm the same way you're going to pitch to Juan Soto or Aaron Judge. You're not going to do that because you know if I allow them to walk, it's not station to station anymore. He's looking on a ball in the dirt, very similar to what you see out of Volpe. He's trying to get to second base. You're not paying attention at third base the way Arenado was yesterday. You're looking down at the dirt and feeling yourself. Well, I'm going to slide into third base and your pitcher's going to throw the ball away and I'm going to score on the same play. How many Yankees the last decade have scored runs like that? The last time I remember seeing this was seeing players like Johnny Damon. You remember Johnny Damon in the postseason where he's just taken off to second base? Nobody's at third because of the shift. He goes to third base. The Yankees don't do that anymore. Jazz Chisholm does. So this is just perfect for Jazz. And obviously, as a podcast that covers this team, we're reaping the rewards of seeing something different. And I think our audience will appreciate that. I'm glad that we're actually seeing it come to fruition.
So do you remember when the Yankees traded for Chase Headley, right?
I do.
What was your thoughts on him? Because you and I both wanted Jazz, and I thought there was a ceiling that had not been reached. And I looked at Chase Headley, and I got to be honest with you, I did not like the Chase Headley move at all. I thought he was overrated.
Yep.
And I just looked at the last 24 games of Jazz. So every game he's played with the Yankees, as opposed to Chase Headley's first 24 games of the Yankees, almost identical records, 13 and 11. Chase Headley hit 241, a 333 on base percentage, and a 678 OPS. Okay. Jazz is hitting 333. Mm-hmm. He's got over 1,000 OPS. He has an on base percentage over 400. I mean, I understand it is a somewhat small sample size, but I think it's safe to say that looking back at previous Yankees trades, especially infielders, they've gone out and gotten guys like Dustin Ackley and Edwin Encarnacion. And I mean, they've gotten like Martin Prado at the end of his career. Like Stephen Drew was another one. They did such a good job.
Gracious.
Yeah, they did such a good job going out and getting Jazz Chisholm. I actually would go as far as to say this is completely unlike anything they normally do. He is not at all a Yankee. The type of Yankees that they go after, the type of guys they go after Anthony Rizzo's, right? And if Anthony Rizzo pans out, then maybe the Anthony Rizzo version of not panning out would be Joey Gallo. That's the type of guy they go after.
Yeah, and I feel like the first taste of that, wasn't it? I mean, wasn't the first taste of that Josh Donaldson, where they bring in a player where usually when you bring in a Yankee, you say, right. Personality-wise, IKF. That you're honestly so right. But Josh Donaldson was a player. Everyone's like, well, I mean, he's a mean personality. Opponents don't like him. How's he going to fit in the locker room? How's that going to work?
I get that idea.
You know what I mean? And
I get that idea.
Fit with Jazz Chisholm. When you think about Yankees, what do you think about? You think about, okay, what's he going to look like with a clean shave? Okay, after that, are you cool with shaving? What about the fact that you can't have your hair the way that maybe you want it to be? What about the fact that you can't wear this certain batting gloves? Maybe you're going to sit a day because your manager, right? All these different things. Are you going to say the right things in the media? We're going to hound you. Jazz Chisholm, when you think about him, you don't think Yankee. I don't think of him at all. Not at all. He's just a player who seems like he's relaxed. And when I think of New York Yankees baseball, I don't think relaxed. I think tense. That's what I think about. Tense and winning. Okay. And now it's been 15 years since we've won. So now I almost feel like I'm delusional for thinking about winning when it comes to the Yankees. But for Jazz Chisholm, this was something that I would never expect Brian Cashman to do. And I know what they're going to think. Well, how much credit are you going to give Brian Cashman? He did one thing right. And I would tell you, you're not wrong. You're not wrong that this was something that he did. I'm not just going to call this luck. It's not. This move was something that we all called an obvious fit. And there have been plenty of obvious fits for New York that we've said no to. There have been a lot of players. Bryce Harper seemed like the most obvious fit in New York. He clearly wanted to play in New York. Clear as day. He loves playing in Philadelphia now. He wouldn't take it back now for anything. But at the time, he didn't know that. So he wanted to come here to New York. Obvious fit. And yet, Brian Cashman said no. Why? Because he does things his way and not necessarily what we want. Well, this was something that a lot of fans did want amongst many other things. He did this, and we're now seeing the type of player we were all asking for.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, okay? Jazz is 26 years old. When they went out and they got Matt Carpenter, right, in the 2022 season, like that was another thing, right? But he was older. So It was like the way he was hitting, it was like, wow, this is crazy. What's funny is Carpenter drew more headlines because people weren't expecting it. He signed a minor league deal to start with the Yankees, right?
Right.
But if you look, Jazz is doing just about the same stuff. Maybe not as many home runs, but he's been as impactful.
I'm happier with this than Matt Carpenter. Is that weird to say?
Well, you know what this is really similar to if you take away the age? 2013 when the Yankees got Alfonso Soriano back and he was like carrying that team. Had 17 home runs last 58 games of the year. He hit 256, 850 OPS. Alfonso Soriano was a key contributor for that 2013 team. And I know they finished third and they didn't make the playoffs, but I mean, that was a team that, didn't have, I mean, A-Rod only played 44 games that year. Curtis Granderson got hurt, I mean, this team had Ichiro, Travis Hafner, Vernon Wells, Jason Nix was a starter. Lyle Overbay started 142 games. Chris Stewart was their starting catcher. So, just to put it in perspective, what he was able to do to come in there, Soriano down the stretch, I mean, he led the team in home runs outside of Robinson Cano. And he did that. And I'm talking about just him as a Yankee. His last 58 games with the Yankees, he was second in home runs on the entire year for the Yankees.
Right.
So that's kind of how I see it. I'm not saying that, Jazz Chisholm is Alfonso Soriano, already has 400 home runs under his belt and everything. Soriano had a great career.
Yes, he did.
But what I am saying is that while Soriano was playing in meaningless games, and unfortunately they finished 85 and 77 and missed the playoffs, and I think they came decently close to getting in as a wild card, which is why they picked him up at the deadline. But the point I'm making here is Jazz is playing meaningful baseball right now, and he's playing at a high level, and he's doing what you're saying and what I'm saying combined.
Yes,
he's become a star, but
yeah.
He's also become a star in his role. He doesn't need to be boosted up in the order, batting first, batting second.
I was just going to ask you that.
Not
saying I wanted to. I knew your answer because we talked about this just before going live, but a lot of people are going to look at this player and say, well, I mean, you're hitting 390 over an extended period of time. You've hit 8 homers in your last 15 games. You've stolen more bases than you've hit homers. Well, what do I do with that information? How many 7 or 6 hitters in the big leagues are doing that? Because people look at this team and think, well, they don't necessarily have the pitching that I would like. But do you remember the runs scored that we talked about? The Yankees being the second best offense in Major League Baseball, despite what they do when they fall behind, despite their record when they fall behind, they put up runs. Well, most of the season, we didn't have Jazz Chisholm. Okay, so this offense is even better than that number suggests. Now, a lot of people would look at those numbers and say, you hit 400 and steal a bunch of bags, you should be hitting 2. You should be hitting leadoff. Well, how about this? When you're talking about Rizzo, Volpe, Verdugo, and that eventually will be Jason Dominguez, you're not talking about Gleyber Torres, who's absolutely looked like Gleyber Torres that we know and love. You've got Soto and Judge, Wells, who's the best hitting catcher since mid-June. You've got Stanton, who hasn't slowed down at all. We're just praying that he stays on the field. You've got Chisholm playing like a star who doesn't need to move at all in the lineup. And Jason Dominguez, your number 1 prospect, who should show up and compete and be productive for this team. At this point, now you're talking about your number 1 prospect from 2 years ago in Anthony Volpe, who's an afterthought in your lineup. He is your 8 or 9 hitter. And
that's
if he
a really good lineup.
Anything, the lineup all of a sudden becomes very good because of one trade and one call up. That's why we put such a big emphasis on Jason Dominguez and how soon he gets here. We want to see it. But if Jazz Chisholm's going to play this way, in this style, and then you bring in Jason Dominguez, who very clearly is one of the best athletes in our organization, the Yankees suddenly aren't so old. They're not so slow, right? It doesn't feel as lethargic. And that changes when you bring 2 fresh bodies into the roster.
Absolutely. And I mean, you hit it, probably 20, 30, 40 episodes ago when you said the issue with the Yankees is we have no production from a position at third base that is a premium offensive position.
Yep.
And that was the case with, believe it or not, former MVP Josh Donaldson. They were hoping miraculously, kind of like what they're doing with DJ LeMahieu, although we haven't seen him in a little bit, so I'll give him a break. But they were hoping that miraculously somebody like Josh Donaldson would just have an MVP type season and the glove would be there and everything would be great. I mean, I don't hate the trade that much. Because you got, IKF and you moved on from some pieces that, like for instance, Gary Sanchez, you were just done with. So I didn't despise it, but I just didn't like the idea of moving on from Gio Urshela. I think that was my issue. I felt like they were being picky. They wanted more power. Like that. Yeah. And I think that they ultimately paid the price for that. They're still paying the prices. They're paying for Josh Donaldson today and Aaron Hicks, guys that they let go. But I think the thing with Jazz and this lineup, I actually want to throw this over to you before we dive into Gleyber and Cole and the rest of the show. I want to throw this at you. In my opinion, the hitters at the top of the lineup are the best hitters in the lineup, right?
Definitely.
I mean, I would say so. Maybe not in everybody's lineup. The Yankees, I think they're definitely. Now, Jazz's speed and Volpe's speed, and whenever Cabrera plays, right, or Jason Dominguez, I would argue having that speed near the bottom of your lineup makes it easier on the lesser hitters in the lineup. No pitcher is like, yeah, I thrive when I have Jazz Chisholm on first and Volpe on second. No. So I feel like that's almost kind of this hidden thing about the lineup is that like Stanton doesn't need any help because, Stanton's going to be Stanton. Judge is going to be Judge. Soto's going to be Soto, right?
Right.
But like a Rizzo coming off the IL who has not played very long, having Jazz as a threat on the base pass can kind of get in a pitcher's head. And now Rizzo, who's a veteran hitter, can take advantage of that. And then I look at somebody who's struggling like a Verdugo. Now you have, potentially Rizzo's on base, but you likely have Chisholm and Volpe on base. That's in a pitcher's mind. So when they're going up against Verdugo, they're not thinking about Verdugo. They're thinking about Jazz about to steal. I almost knocked that over. Jazz about to steal a base. Because, he'll steal when they're up by 5. We saw it today.
Right. Because if Chisholm's playing well,
Volpe
is playing well, which they have proven. Chisholm's been very consistent as a Yankee, but Volpe has not. Anthony Volpe either looks like he's Michael Young or he looks like a lemon. He looks really bad. Okay. And then you have the broadcast telling us about his swing, to which I really don't want to hear about. But if Volpe and Chisholm are both getting on base, which as of late they actually have been, well, I don't want Chisholm at leadoff. I don't want Volpe now at leadoff because and this is the thing, guys, we make mistakes too as podcasters. When we say we want Anthony Volpe at the leadoff spot because we need that dynamic guy out there, what we're really telling you, and now that we've learned, we really just needed somebody to go meander over to first base. And that's what Gleyber Torres does. That's called fit. Gleyber Torres isn't the third best hitter in this lineup. Not in my opinion, he's not.
No.
I think Gleyber Torres is just showing that he's Gleyber Torres again, which is a very comparable hitter. But his job right now is to see a bunch of pitches, put a bunch of pressure on the pitcher, and reach first base. He's doing exactly that. We're now talking about hits with Gleyber Torres, not home runs and power
3 for 5 day.
Right. We're not talking about ops anymore. We're not talking about the usual analytics that seem to matter too much to the Yankees. No, Gleyber Torres has one job. And this is the same job we asked of Rice and all these different guys at the leadoff position, Verdugo. They couldn't do it. Gleyber Torres is now doing it. So he's not the third best offensive player. And people have mentioned, okay, well, when you bring in Jason Dominguez, is he maybe your third best player? So you put him at leadoff? Well, I believe you leave the fit alone. You leave a player who's doing the job correctly. You leave him in the position that they're in, and you put Jason Dominguez in a run-producing position, like hitting sixth. And that puts you in a position where if Jazz Chisholm or Volpe get on base, I'm not worried about them stealing ahead of Anthony Rizzo. You can steal for all I care because Rizzo's job is to reach first base. and to occasionally put the ball in the seats. Juan Soto, when Juan Soto and Judge are up at the plate, you think I want someone tap dancing around at first base, getting a jumping lead and stealing second base? What good does it do me at all to see you at second base as opposed to first base when Aaron Judge hits his 63rd home run? Totally pointless. So I get it. A lot of hits aren't just home runs. I understand there are ways it possibly could work. But for the Yankees, their lineup construction needs to be based on fit. And I think right now we're starting to finally see a lineup that's not shifting around. Alex Rodriguez talked about this. He went on the broadcast and said, actually it wasn't the broadcast. I think it was an interview. But he said the one thing we had in 2009 was consistency with our lineup.
I love
that. Was the one thing we always had. We said, okay, Jeter or Damon, Jeter, right? Like we had a total understanding of who was hitting where, why, who was playing what position and why they had to do so. And there was no mystery. Everybody knew their job and their role. Well, we're kind of seeing now when you mention Wells has to hit fourth, he now suddenly is always hitting fourth. It's no longer this flip-flop between fourth and fifth. It's making sense. And hopefully that turns into wins. And hopefully we get some outs. If we do that, I mean, we're scoring.
Yeah. And I just think it's part of us honestly growing as analysts, throughout the year, because you and I both wanted Volpe at the top. And, for all the kind of criticism we give Boone, I give Boone a lot of credit for going back, being willing to go back to Gleyber when that was your gut. You went with him first. It didn't work. You didn't listen to everybody else. You just went back to him. I do appreciate that because he solved his own issue by being willing to admit that I might have had the right guy, but it was at the wrong time. And then finding that right time, because this is also part of the job of being a manager is you have to be there in the cages during BP. And you need to really see, okay, this guy looks like he's really, locked in. We're starting to see better things out of him. The mechanics are there. It's, obviously we talk about the in-game stuff, but it's the away from the game stuff that also matters. And I do think he deserves credit for, clearly seeing that Gleyber was about to figure it out, because people would have said before this, well, he has a pick on Gleyber. I mean, I even came out and I said, I would say Verdugo is more guilty of, the lack of hustle than Gleyber, but I still appreciated him calling out Gleyber because I think
Verdugo didn't even have the pedigree either.
No, and I feel like it changed Gleyber's season for the better. And you just listen to him talk today with Meredith Marakovitz after the game, and you could just see it's a whole different Gleyber. I mean, just being like, yeah, I'm just going to go up there and, just trying to get on base and set the table. It's like, yes, thank you. Don't need to hit a home run. You don't even need a double. Just be an RBI. That's all you're trying to do is just be a dude on the base, which then goes back to the whole point with Volpe and Jazz. While it sounds nice to have explosion on the base paths, at the same time, not only are you disrupting the batters, but you're also limiting these guys that have incredible gifts that are not very common in this league. So I think it's best where they are. I like that, we talked about the lineup because it hasn't been something that we've really addressed. I mean, we've talked about it at times, but since, Rizzo came back, this is the best iteration of the Yankees lineup we've seen all year. And now we're just waiting on Jason Dominguez because this will be the final form. This essentially is like all the Infinity Gauntlets, right. In the gauntlet. That's when you're like, all right, we're ready. Lock and load.
Can Jason pitch? I feel like we need to ask him that at this point because this Yankees lineup, as much complaining as everyone did, and I completely understand the complaints, their numbers seemingly were much better than what we saw. It's just interesting the way that played. But I think in large part, when your starting pitching goes out there and pitches 3 1/3, and you're in your bullpen in the 4th and 5th inning already, right? That's going to make you feel like, yesterday, perfect example. We scored 7 runs. 7. Our offense was great yesterday. We got blitzed by a touchdown.
Yep.
That happened. And guess what, guys? You forget all about the offense. It's not going to feel so fun. No one wants to talk about that a guy had 3 hits in a game you lost by 7. And it makes total sense. You lost. It's not enjoyable. So that's where we are. The starting pitching's got to be, it's honestly just got to be serviceable. You look around baseball, everyone's got a flaw. The Los Angeles Dodgers, they don't have a ton of depth in their starting rotation. There's a reason they went out and got Flaherty, right? Clayton Kershaw just went down. Now, I understand, not a huge postseason pitcher, but again, not healthy. These are guys they're relying on. The Baltimore Orioles just blew a game yesterday. The Baltimore Orioles are a team that cannot get an out in the bullpen. None of them. Nobody. Their starting rotation, Corbin Burns, the guy I said that we should have gotten, he's been getting shelled. Now, they played the White Sox today, so obviously that was undone. But Corbin Burns of late has been getting shelled. They cannot have that. So imagine if the Yankees just had Gerrit Cole and nothing else, and Gerrit Cole was getting shelled on September 2nd. What would you guys be saying? You guys would be saying, we're done. Wouldn't you? It would make a lot of sense if you actually said that. So,
did Fangraphs cook?
What did Fangraphs say? Oh, you're talking about the percentages. Yes.
Maybe they cooked,
that's
bro.
probably what it is, because most often when you talk about teams that win the World Series, you need starting pitching that's going to go innings and allow your bullpen to stay fresh and ready for a tight game, right? Well, if you don't go those innings, you're cooked. So if they go out with those percentages, and I think they gave Baltimore like a 6 or 7% chance, not very good. Well, that may be why. So there are people out here, and there are, again, going to be people in the comments that say the Yankees are still cooked. They don't have the pitching. Rodon's on the mound tomorrow. What are we getting from him? Well, guess what, guys? All of the inconsistencies that you see out of this Yankees team, they are all valid, but everybody else has more of them. Why do I know this? Because look at their win-loss records. Look at them. They played the White Sox too. They didn't beat the White Sox either. Okay? They got swept. The Baltimore Orioles, you always look at the Yankees and say, what are we doing against teams below 500? The Orioles got swept by the A's this year. It happened.
Oh, yeah.
So
absolutely.
Let's not just have short-term memory with what our flaws are. Okay? Our flaws are absolutely there. We saw Holmes, and we're going to talk about him here in a bit. Holmes was atrocious today. He was bad. But guess what? If we threw Craig Kimbrell and you want to swap places and have Craig Kimbrell be our closer, how far do you think the Yankees go in that situation? And a lot of people will tell you, if you watch them play, oh, the Yankees are done. You say it all the time. They're as good as their closer. Well, I guess we wouldn't win then. So
Kimbrell's
there
terrible.
are so many teams with flaws in this league. This might be, I hate to say this, this might be the weakest champion ever that we'll see in a long time. So I want to make sure that people remember last year when you saw D-backs, Rangers, and nobody thought we were getting that World Series. Nobody. I don't care what they tell you. Well, we might get another World Series where you're just like, oh, okay, Yankees, Padres, and the Padres win the World Series. How many people predicted the San Diego Padres would be one of the favorites in the NL after losing Juan Soto? That should tell you right there where the league's at. So that's where I'm at. The Yankees just have to be better than the other teams. It's not this contest of who can be the 98 Yankees. That's not this. Okay. So let's try to temper our expectations and be excited about what is working with the Yankees. And that is that they're finally showing up to October with some guys that are willing to do something different to score. And that's what excites me so much. I've been asking for it for years, and I know a lot of others have been as well, but that's what's exciting to me, and I just hope at some point or another we can rely on this pitching. Rodon's probably a good start tomorrow. If he can give us something, you're talking about back-to-back starts with Cole and Rodon where they look like a 1-2 finally. So that's exciting.
Yeah, today really was just an exciting game. Just to see them take care of business like that, even though it got a little too close for comfort with Clay Holmes. I mean, this is an 8-4 ball game. You can't take that for granted on the road. This is part of the reason to be able to get up, go out on the road trip and win this game by 4 after your offense just put together 7 runs and lost by a touchdown at home is why this team is what they are. It's why this team is still in the hunt, because say what you will, they may be down in the dirt. They might be down in the dumps, whatever. But when push comes to shove, they do crawl out of that, that kind of downtrend. And I mean, this was an important win today. I thought Jack Leiter came out, really established dominance early on. And then, it just took that one crooked number, in the sixth inning and it changed the game. And you could say, oh, well, the Yankees don't score in the first inning, that they're pretty much done. Or if they don't have all their runs come in one inning, who cares? No one's going to care. No one's going to care. All they care about is the result. No one's going to remember this game down the line. History is just going to remember this game as the Yankees won. And maybe Stanton is mentioned because it was a 25th home run. So it's the 10th season of his career with 25 home runs. But no one is going to remember this game. Right. And, Gary, just to wrap, up this spot real quick, because I know you wanted to talk about Gleyber a little bit. We're not going to.
And I have a question for you about Holmes as well, because I think this question. Go ahead and finish.
So I did want to mention, I thought Gleyber obviously was great at the plate as well as Rizzo, but I wanted to touch on Gleyber as a fielder. Okay. I feel like you and I have definitely said like, oh yeah, most errors in the league, worst fielder at second. Like I've said that multiple times in the show. Since he has been the Gleyber Torres that got benched and clearly puts in the work now, the effort, will this continue? We don't know, but it's still the case because he always had the talent. It's a matter of, his effort, right? Since he's done that, he's looked like a pretty solid second baseman, if you ask me. Even his errors, I saw a comment weeks ago and someone said, I have a theory that Gleyber has a lot of those errors because he gets to baseballs that other second basemen cannot get to. And I thought about it. And when I watch Gleyber, I think his range is grossly underrated. I do. I think he's got great range. For not being the most athletic second baseman, I'm kind of surprised at some of the balls he's able to retrieve, like into the outfield, sliding play, 360, whatever you want. Right. He's made quite a few of those. So I guess really what I'm saying, and I want to put it on the record, is that I think Gleyber Torres has become an underrated fielder. And I don't know how long this is going to last. And this could age horribly. Like tomorrow, he could have 5 errors.
Yeah, this could be the worst take ever.
But I think
you might be right too.
I really think he has turned the corner. And I think when he is putting in the work and when he clearly has the effort, he's, dare I say, barely above average as a first baseman. Second baseman. I think he's underrated, though. I do.
Okay, so when I watch Gleyber Torres, without the effort, obviously without the production, I felt like I was looking at a player. It almost felt like you're looking at a kid going to high school, first day of school, freshman year, and he's got no one to sit with at lunch, just completely lost. Okay. And I know Gleyber Torres is really liked in this clubhouse. I know he's supported by the players, specifically Aaron Judge. But when you're talking about a player who's literally his one attribute, it's not running the bases like Jazz Chisholm. He's not going to steal 30 bags. He's not going to do any of the little things, really. He's trying to drive the ball out of the ballpark and really go gap to gap. He's supposed to be a more all-around offensive player that's not athletic really in too many ways. He's also doesn't, according to stats, he doesn't have the strongest arm. And this StatCast also says that he doesn't have a ton of range. So that's kind of where I back on that. But that doesn't mean everything just because those say, because we've even said like some of the foot speed numbers, they clearly don't add up. But Jake, for me with Gleyber Torres, with effort, he's average at second base. And that's what I need. That wouldn't be drawing my complaints. You think I'm going to watch a championship team and go, why isn't their second baseman a Gold Glover? No, I don't give a rip about that. Because if I saw somebody defensively who was average, that would tell me he must have another role for this organization. There must be another reason why he's there. And now, today, as we currently sit September 2nd, that role is here. He's no longer lost in a space station. We don't know where he's at. No, Gleyber Torres' role, and he tells you post-game, you mentioned it, I'm supposed to set the tone. I'm the table setter. That's his job. And that's something that takes effort. You need to be intentional, and it takes energy. If I turn on a Yankees baseball game 2.5 months ago, you think I'd say, oh, that guy was giving me a lot of effort today. You think I would have pointed to Gleyber Torres? Please. Absolutely not. He was boring to watch, and he knew he was boring to watch. And you know what, guys? Sometimes when you're doing a job and you're doing it super lethargic, it even bores you. It makes you feel useless. I've done jobs where I'm not giving my best effort, and I was 16, 17 working at Honda. And guess what? I was dragging my feet all around. You really thought I was enjoyable. I didn't enjoy looking at myself in the mirror. Okay. Gleyber Torres wasn't enjoying coming to Yankee Stadium. You actually brought up, Jake, I want to make sure you get credit for this. You mentioned Gleyber Torres looks like he's tired of playing for the Yankees. And you know what it actually was? He was not enjoying baseball. That's what was happening. And the only thing he had to do to undo that was provide some effort, and to which we gave Aaron Boone credit. You know what he did? He benched him. Here you go. You don't want to be benched. And he was upset about being benched, rightfully so. Essentially, you lost your job temporarily and you got back on the field, and he goes, oh, wow, I guess that kick in the rear end that they gave me was what I needed. Now, all of a sudden, Gleyber Torres is smiling again. Now, all of a sudden, Gleyber Torres, he tapped the ball weakly in the infield today. He's sprinting down the first base line. That's something you didn't see 2 months ago. So now we're looking at a player with an identity, and that's all we needed. We needed Gleyber Torres to be traditional Gleyber Torres, which is mediocre at second base, got a little arm, used to be a shortstop. Go out there and do the job you're assigned to do offensively. You do that. The Yankees don't have a problem with Gleyber Torres making errors. You're going to make errors. Your job, he's not a Jose Altuve at second base. He's not. There's a reason certain players make $35 million a year and other players make 15 or 20. Some guys are good at one side of the ball or the other. We had this conversation with Juan Soto. So long story short, I believe Gleyber Torres is a player today with identity that very clearly we're not just going to chalk it up to a finished product now. He's got to finish this season. We're a half game up on Baltimore. We need this version of Gleyber Torres if we want any chance to win division.
Yeah, one thing I don't think that's talked about nearly enough about Gleyber is he's lowered his chase rate considerably. I mean, 25.9% of the time he was chasing pitches out of the zone in 2023. He's now down at 21.5. That's 91st percentile among all offensive players. So I think he's taken a step back in a lot of areas. And that might hurt some people like, oh, he had 25 home runs last year, 24 the year before. I like my Gleyber at 260, 25 home runs. And that may be the case for you. Personally, I like this new iteration of Gleyber, a guy that he hits 12 home runs. He's willing to take off the home run power a little bit and focus more on making good contact, working walks, working counts. He wasn't really doing that in the past. I do think 2023 is when he started to kind of try to become that player. That was the first time. Is this
who we want Volpe to be, by the way?
I think so. This is a good baseball player. This is what I'm trying to say. This might not generate all-star worthy stuff because if you have 12 home runs in September, your all-star is probably going to have like 5 home runs, right? You're not going to be an all-star. That's okay. Right. All-star is very overrated. Clay Holmes is an all-star this year, mind you. So,
can I ask you the question about Clay Holmes, by the way? Because I think this is a valid question.
Yeah.
So if I had to ask our audience, what percentage of you, and Jake, you're part of this, and I want you to answer this, what percentage of people believe that the Yankees can win a World Series with Clay Holmes, not just in the bullpen, as your designated closer? And before I want to hear your answer, and then I'm going to tell you where my head's at. What percentage of fans believe it's possible with him at closer?
So I think obviously the silent majority is called the silent majority for a reason. The loudest people would have you believe that it would be 1%. That's not realistic.
Okay.
I do think even you and I would say when Clay Holmes is on and he has that slider going for him, he didn't really use it as much, but he has the slider. When Clay Holmes is on, there's a reason why he's a closer in major leagues, right?
Right.
The Yankees can absolutely still win a World Series with Clay Holmes. Easily. With him closing. But, okay, you're asking percentage of people that think that. I'm going to say, because not everything is Twitter, I'm going to say it's 50-50.
Okay. I actually think that's being generous. I believe if you ask the average Yankees fan and our viewer, our listeners, I would say are a little bit more positive than the average fan. I would
say so.
Now, I believe less than half of our fan base that listens to our show every day believes that the Yankees will win the World Series this year. And they're looking at Clay Holmes as one of the main reasons why that's the case. But Jake, here's where I'm at with this. Do you remember who beat us in 2001?
Craig
The Arizona.
Oh, wait, 2001, not 2000.
Yes. In 2001.
Okay.
The Arizona Diamondbacks. Okay. Now, obviously, the Arizona Diamondbacks beat us on a essentially, maybe it was broken bat, maybe it wasn't, Luis Gonzalez flare off of Mariano Rivera. But here's where I am. The Arizona Diamondbacks should have pummeled the New York Yankees in that series. Why? Do you know why that series was as close as it was? Because of Byung-Hyun Kim.
Oh.
Because of Byung-Hyun Kim, a 21-year-old out of the bullpen. He blew multiple games in the World Series. So if Byung-Hyun Kim can pitch multiple games in the World Series against a far superior roster, and he goes out there and just completely, Derek Jeter goes oppo at Yankee Stadium, walking off a game against Byung-Hyun Kim. And there was actually a point, and I wasn't a Yankees fan at this time, so I'm going to be clear and honest with you guys. I, with my mother, made a sign because I was at Game 7 of the World Series. I have the ticket here somewhere. I'll actually show it next podcast. And I was sitting in dead center field, sitting there thinking to myself, we've got this sign that says, "We still love you. Love you, Byung-Hyun Kim." That's actually what it said. Now, imagine showing up to Yankee Stadium and you say, "We still love you, Clay Holmes." If I told everybody the Yankees are going to go to the World Series this year against the Philadelphia Phillies or the Padres, and Clay Holmes is going to blow 2 games and the Yankees are still going to win the World Series, would you believe that was possible? You should. You should believe it's possible because players blow games all the time. We're not going to get a Mariano Rivera. They don't come around. All these teams blow games. Aroldis Chapman in 2016, the Cubs went out and won the World Series. Did Aroldis Chapman shut the game down against Rajai Davis? Nope. He wet the sheets and gave up a bomb down the third base line, and they went out and won in extra innings. That's my point here, Jake. You actually bring up a really good point that you're as good as your closer, but when you look in history, doesn't it show that awful closers or just poor work in the short term, you can overcome it? I feel like the Yankees have a better shot than what people are saying. And that's kind of where I'm at.
I do too. Trust me, Clay Holmes does scare me. He
scares the absolute you-know-what out of me. He's awful.
But I will say, in limited, obviously very, very limited sample size, 8 innings pitched to be exact, 6 games. Clay Holmes has not given up a run in the postseason.
Okay.
Only 3 hits, 2 walks, so a .625 whip and a 0 ERA. I understand it's super limited, like very, very limited, but I'll take that. Going into this year, he's had some experience. High leverage situations, Clay Holmes struggles, but at the same time, he's had his moments too. I feel like this isn't exactly like a golden age for closers either. Like if you're not class A, I don't even want you. Obviously we know our guy on the A's and he's great, but he's also injured. So, currently right now, who are you looking at? Like, yeah, that it's really class A, right?
And then probably the Padres have the next best thing, which is Scott.
Yeah.
Right. They got him at the
deadline.
deadline.
Has an issue walking people. So that's going to be as just as much of an issue as Clay Holmes giving up contact, soft contact, whether it's hard or soft does not matter. Tanner Scott walks people, walks a lot of guys. He was the 1 percentile, like the last.
That's right, he was.
Remember?
So
that was the one thing
assumption
you and I said about trading for Tanner Scott. We love the guy, but the walks were a little concerning.
Yeah. Shouldn't we just make the assumption then that the Yankees really have a better chance to win the World Series than what people are giving it credit for? We're a wildly flawed team, and just accept when we go to October and we're up 2-0 in a divisional series game, up 2-0 in the series, and Clay Holmes gets to the mound, we might be up 3 and he just gives up 4 in the top half of the ninth and completely blows the game. You should expect that's going to happen at some point in October. It just is. You have to win a lot of games to win the World Series. So Clay Holmes is going to blow probably multiple games in October. But I feel like we just have to believe, well, we know for a fact our offense is going to be the number 1 offense in baseball entering into October. That's not an opinion. That's a stat. Okay? We score more runs than anybody outside of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and we're getting Jason Dominguez. They're not. So having said that, right. Well, yeah, we'll see if he does. But we're assuming Jason Dominguez is implementing himself into this lineup. We saw what he was last year, and we see what he is in the minor leagues right now. So, Jake, just accept we're going to blow the hell out of multiple games in October, and all of us are going to be livid. We're going to complain and complain and complain because we care. That's why we do it. So, but here's the thing. What do they do tomorrow? Well, the Yankees might show up tomorrow and punch one of the other team's 2 starters right in the mouth and put up 8 in 4 innings. Now
playing Heaney. Again.
They're playing the Hind Dogs tomorrow? Does he look like prime Andy Pettitte against us tomorrow? What do you think?
We'll see.
I think we finally punch through against the lefty. I think we finally get it done. I really believe. I think Trevino is going to be in the lineup tomorrow.
1,000. Fewer things have been guaranteed more than tomorrow Trevino being in the lineup. Can I also say this?
Yeah.
This might be controversial. I'm actually more concerned with Aaron Judge than I am with Clay Holmes.
Because you just accept that he is going to be bad, but
Aaron
Judge has to be good.
If Aaron Judge doesn't have an Alex Rodriguez type of resurgence in the postseason, the Yankees might be doomed just off that.
That's fair, because if Judge isn't great, we can't win. But if Holmes is awful, his typical self, we can still win.
Yes.
Interesting.
I think that's, and again, you know me, I don't dunk on Judge. I love Judge. Didn't even bring up that lackadaisical play in the outfield today. I still can't believe Simeon scored on that.
Oh, I missed it. I didn't even see the play. I never saw the play. People were tweeting me. They almost acted like I made the play. They're like, "Can you believe Aaron Judge?" Pissed. I get it.
Gary, it was one of those dribblers to center field.
Okay.
Judge, routine, picks it up, throws it back in the infield. Simeon never stopped. So he ran from first and scored, essentially.
From first base on a... Oh.
Judge threw it in. Judge threw it in. He might have been on second. I think he was on... It's one of those two. But he scored. Simeon scores. Judge throws it to second. And there's no throw at the plate. Mind you, when Judge threw it to second, Simeon hadn't even crossed third base yet. So it was frustrating because it felt like if you did that in a video game, you're out. But you actual human beings couldn't do it correctly.
I'm gonna have to see the play because, like I told you before, I was watching the game, but I also was walking around the mall, so I missed the play. I'll have to have someone send this to me. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna send it to me after we hit stop on the record.
Yeah, I mean,
button,
it's who was it? It was Smith double. It was the double. Okay, it wasn't a single. It was a double. Simeon scored.
Okay,
that made it a 2-1 ball game. But it's but
he shouldn't have scored. Okay.
Yeah, why did they score runs there? I don't know. But yeah.
Oh, do we have any other topics, or can I give a movie? Because I've been waiting for this the whole show.
One more topic.
Oh, let's hear it.
So we'll skip. I mean, we talked about Cole. He's 3-1, 1.85 ERA, 214 opponent batting average in his last 34 innings and 6 starts.
Do it again.
I'd say he's back. Okay. Left the game due to a cramp. He's all good. He'll be ready to go. That's good. So Jack Curry, basically confirmed Clark Schmidt is going to return versus Chicago this weekend, and Luis Gil is expected to return with him as well. So Jack Curry, first off, started off with the 6-man rotation rhetoric that you and I discussed long before Garrett Cole came back. Boone would not rule it out. But then Jack Curry mentioned an idea that I've never heard of before, and I don't know why. It makes a lot of sense. He mentioned the idea that Clark Schmidt would start the first 5 innings against the Cubs, and Luis Gil would finish the last 4 innings of the game. Now, I don't know if this is even sustainable. I don't know if it can be done. It seems cut and dry, Gary. It seems like you take a starter, he can go 5, then you take another starter, he can go 4, and you just have him come in and pretend like he's starting a game. Hopefully his, mental state is intact.
Right.
It seems simple. Now, I know, before I sent it to you, we talked off air about this because this was interesting. We talked about, those are 2 righties. So the issue, especially with the Yankees being heavily analytical, would they be willing to be like, hey, we're going to start Schmidt and Gil, that's our game plan, and essentially let the other team know, hey, they're going to roll with 2 righties. Why don't we just load up the lineup with lefties? That guy on the waivers, he might not even play another game, but he's going to be in our lineup today because he's a lefty. Why not something like that? Right. So, Gary, I sent it over to you. What are your thoughts on this? Because I actually think they should do this.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a must, because a lot of people, in order to protect Luis Gil in that inning limit that everyone's been talking about, we talked to Boone about it, and Boone said, we're not going to be capping out Gil on innings. Well, one way to actually bottle up those innings is to deploy a strategy that also protects the bullpen. And that is not necessarily putting Luis Gil at closer to replace Holmes the way some people have suggested. No. And also to address the point you just made, when you said, okay, we're going to go with Schmidt, then we're going with Gil. In my opinion, if you're going to deploy this, you absolutely keep this under wraps. You don't say a thing about it. And you just go out there and Schmidt starts the game, and you're talking about the 4th inning, the 5th inning. He's been built up to go 4 or 5 innings at this point in his rehab. And you pull him off the mound. You bring in Luis Gil on a clean inning. He's a starter. You bring him in on a clean inning, and now Luis Gil can finish out the rest of the game. At most, you might have to bring in one other arm, like a lefty specialist, to come get a guy out situationally. But outside of that, how else are you going to protect from putting Mark Leiter Jr. on the mound? How else are you going to protect Tommy Kahnle, who's up there in age? How are you going to protect his innings, right? Luke Weaver's not been the same player. Very clearly, he could use a break. Well, when you bring in 2 starters, you really think I need Luke Weaver to come out and give me 2 innings? I don't. I actually don't even need you to touch the mound. And by the way, this isn't me saying I don't like Luke Weaver. I understand it's fun and it's exciting to complain about pitchers who aren't pitching well of late, but Luke Weaver, we've seen what he can do when he's right. Well, the best way to get these guys right is to get them feeling fresh. Players don't usually feel fresh in early September. That's just what comes with the territory. So this idea, again, you mentioned this as well. We don't know if this is coming from Jack Curry, if this is his own idea, but this is spectacular. This is something that is most importantly not analytics driven. This is baseball mind. Every time everyone's like, I love Buck Showalter. I love an old school mind. I miss Joe Torre. This is an idea one of them would have come up with. And that's what I love so much about it. So will they do it? I wouldn't say it's likely, but if they did, I would probably be pumping my fists.
I mean, it's like Cabrera playing first base. You're like, wait, what? That happened again?
Yeah.
After we were talking about it? All right. It didn't end up going anywhere, but that was cool. Yeah, I mean, I think the way I see it is this, because to add on to your point, it's not just to do them a favor, okay? Because, I mean, this would technically be like rehab assignments in the major leagues because they're on a pitch count, essentially. They're on an innings count. But what this would also do is it would basically help out the Yankees bullpen, kind of bringing it all, full circle, this episode, how we talked about bullpen issues and all that, and how, I even mentioned, I think Boone overuses the bullpen. Well, now you have these two guys that can give you a full day of no bullpen usage, right? Now, another thing is it gets these guys fresh, but you revs them up at the same time for the postseason.
It's the perfect idea.
Essentially, at that point, you're playing with all sorts of options because this isn't even talking about Poteet. So, I mean, I could see them doing this with Poteet as well. I would probably have Poteet. See, imagine this, Gary, in a perfect world. And obviously, we know as soon as the Yankees implemented this, someone would get hurt in the rotation and make it a 5-man rotation. That's just the way this whole thing works.
It's never not happened.
I mean, that's why every time I watch Verdugo, like he's holding his side today, I'm like, he's going to get hurt right before they were going to call up Jason Dominguez, because I don't think that they still might have called him up, but it's like, it seems to me like they only call up guys when they get hurt. And it's just bizarre how often these guys will just get hurt right when they're wanting to do something, or when
you have a surplus finally. We were at one point, we actually ran an episode. I don't know if you remember this. This was right after I went on my honeymoon earlier this year. And I said, here was our title. Do the Yankees have a surplus in the rotation?
Yes.
Can you imagine even asking that? Now, at the time, it was exactly right. The Yankees had Stroman dominating, right? Poteet could come out and pitch. They didn't care. Anyone who touched the mound for the Yankees, for whatever reason, they were hitting corner. We didn't even need Garrett Cole, it felt like. We were like, what are we going to do with him? This is unbelievable. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh yeah, we're going to protect the bullpen. And then all of a sudden, Johnny Lowe goes down, right? Then all of a sudden, okay, Garrett Cole's nearing a return.
Man, they missed him this year.
Then Schmidt's gone, right? So these things somehow, some way in baseball, they just resolve themselves, unfortunately. I just hope everyone stays healthy and we just see this deployed, because this may be one of the finally a creative way. Minds are turning about how we finally get this bullpen, a Yankees bullpen, to October without being burnt. And maybe it's throwing 2 starters out there. And, well, you remember, Major League Baseball was trying to come up with an idea to almost artificially force starting pitchers to go 6 innings. It was the worst idea I've ever heard.
Oh, it's insane.
It is a direct clapback at any idea like this. So I think before anything stupid happens and Rob Manfred puts in any ridiculous rules, the Yankees should deploy this. I think this is a really good idea, and I'm interested to hear what our audience thinks of it, because we all have our own minds. We all think differently. And the Yankees, a lot of times when they try to get creative, it seems to be really dumb. But this is one of the ways that I think can work.
I will give them credit. They've been creative about stretching Michael King out into a starter. That worked. They were creative in moving Jazz Chisholm to third base. That worked. They moved Waldo to first. I mean, the fact that that's the only reason we talked about it, because he had actually played there before. So they've had some interesting moves where it's like, yeah, that was creative. I would say this, though, if they go that realm, that gives you one full day, because I don't believe, despite what they tell you, the bullpen budget today, how they had to pitch Clay Holmes, I don't actually believe that exists. I don't. I think at this point in the season in September, these guys could go 7 days and that rest matters to them.
I agree.
I think it matters because you're looking at it, and I'm not calling out the Yes broadcast or anything. I totally get why they were saying it. But when you look at the bullpen budget, and shout out to the graphic designer who made that, because I think it's a great graphic. They use it all the time and it gives you an idea of who's going to play and who's not. But the reality is, Gary, you're looking at that the same way you looked at it in April. It's like it should be weighted. right? There's no weight there. And really, I think there needs to be some weight because at this point, we're talking about over 70 innings that, Luke Weaver's pitched this year. Like that eventually matters. And while, the reason I bring up Luke Weaver and not say Tim Hill's barely been on the Yankees. He has not been on the Yankees that long. How about Tommy Kahnle? Kahnle was a reinforcement.
Yeah.
He did not pitch the whole year. Remember he got banged up and was on the IL for a while?
Yeah.
Jake Cousins was in AAA.
Yeah, so your point is the Yankees will show up to a Friday game 1 of the division series and say, well, we had Holmes, he hasn't pitched since Tuesday, so he's ready to go on Friday. Well, Holmes pitched 62 times this year.
Yeah.
He's tired. So, yes, he didn't pitch since Tuesday, and technically his arm's not hurting, right? But is he the version of himself that's even possible to close this game? And the answer, year after year, and all these brilliant Yankees bullpens, we've called Yankees bullpens just super bullpens. We have 3 closers. Where do we go? If we're winning a game in the 5th inning, we're going to win a game. And yet, we'd be winning in the 7th or 8th inning, and we'd end up losing games. Why? Because guys are exhausted. It's not just about did he pitch Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. That matters in like the first half of the regular season. But when you get to September and October baseball, when it starts to get cold out, yeah, you're not going to tell me that just because Tim Hill or any of these Luke Weaver hasn't pitched since Monday and it's a Thursday game that he's just suddenly ready to go now. Because that's what we do. We say, oh, I can see Weaver here. Weaver's going to pitch. But when is someone going to ask the question, is Weaver throwing too much? Is the fact that he threw 4 times last week, does it have any impact on him pitching on Friday?
Because no one talks about him from the postseason. That's what we're getting.
Completely agree. He's off. All of a sudden, he's bad. And Luke Weaver, outside of that series he played against the Diamondbacks, the first series of the year, Luke Weaver's been spectacular. And then all of a sudden, he's not the same pitcher. The fastball command is not the same. Now, why is that? Is it mechanics? Is he worn down? They're going to have to come up with an answer because we need pitchers like this, not just Clay Holmes, to be the best versions of themselves. And that's partly the reason of why we said, go out there with those 2 starting pitchers and lay off these guys for once. Do it for once.
Yeah, I mean, you know who was second in innings in the bullpen? Michael Tonkin.
Oh, wow. DFA'd. And we just DFA him. That's crazy.
I think it was kind of crazy they DFA'd him. I didn't think he was amazing, but I mean, I'd say he's better than Mark Leiter Jr., who's got a 6.08 ERA and 13 in the 3rd innings.
Oh, hey, I told you he wouldn't be on the postseason roster. I actually said that.
Tonkin?
As good as he was, yeah. Because I just felt like the Yankees knew they were milking something that they didn't really believe in. I think they just rode the wave, and when they felt like it was now a little bump in the water, they just
Santana.
Yeah. Dennis Santana. Some pitchers you just use them when you can.
Dennis Santana, Delos Meatballs. God, we have gone through the ringer this year. Are we serious?
How do we still have a hairline?
I don't. Oh, wow. Oh, man. That's so funny. By the way, I did want to point out, okay, there's also Ian Hamilton. He got hurt. He had a setback. So it's just been nonstop with him. Although he tossed a bullpen session on Sunday, so I guess maybe they're going to get him back on the right track. The reason I brought up innings is because Clay Holmes currently has 54 2/3 innings.
Okay.
Do you know what his career high is?
You said he's at 54 innings right now?
Yep, 54 2/3.
I'd say his career high is 60. We'll go a nice round 69.
63 2/3.
Oh, wow.
So he's actually getting close. I actually wonder, and this is maybe the way that they've used him has just been really the problem. They might be in a position where they can't put him past that innings limit. You know what I mean? They might not be able to use him much longer. I mean, there's only 30 games left in the season. they're getting to the point where they might use him more than he's ever been used before. And that's not good. And the games he's pitched in, he has a career high last year was 66.
Well, you know what they might say? You know what the Yankees might say? Is that people like me, because I can put my hand up and say, well, that was wrong, right? It's nothing's perfect. I mentioned that Nestor Cortez can hardly ever go over a certain innings threshold. Well, guess what? Some of the best baseball Nestor Cortez has thrown happens to be right now when he just passed that threshold. Some pitchers, for whatever reason, there's an outlier season. And I feel like the Yankees know that they're not going to be able to just leave Clay Holmes on the sideline and then just pray that he's good in October. I don't know. I think some part of them feels like they're just going to milk him, and then Clay Holmes is just on his way out the door anyway. So I don't know. I get the innings limit because you're trying to use recent history and try to draw a conclusion or try to justify what we're going to see. But Jake, I think we just need to accept that Clay Holmes is just one of those guys. You turn on the game, say, oh, he's right, and that game's over. But then you're going to turn on tomorrow's game, and if you feel like Clay Holmes is going to be lights out again because of what you saw yesterday, you're a fool. You're a fool. Yeah. Clay Holmes has blown 10 saves this year. He's just inconsistent. He'll throw a sinker ball, and Yes Network will talk about it like it's a Clayton Kershaw curveball. And then you'll show up the next day. He'll throw 3 balls in the dirt to the 8-hitter in a row, and you're wondering if he'll ever hit the glove for a strike. That's who he is. So just accept that. And I'm not sure if the innings are going to matter. It's not going to help blowing past a career high. I promise you this. Pitchers don't usually get better, which is your point. When you blow past their career high and then you go into October baseball and say, win me a World Series and close out the biggest games of your life, I don't know if that's a recipe for success. But like I said before, Jake, I think the Yankees can afford to blow games in October because other teams are going to blow games too. They're outside of Cleveland and probably San Diego, maybe Arizona. I mean, there aren't many teams in baseball who have reliable guys in the 9th inning.
Yeah, isn't it surprising that Baltimore didn't really address that?
It's shocking, but they protected their prospects, and that may be a mistake.
They still send him away for Trevor Rogers, who's in the AAA. Remember,
they sent some of them. Yeah,
that was awful. Yeah. So yeah, wrapping it up here. Just want to point out Clay Holmes, his ERA is the 3rd lowest of his Yankee career. It's been 4 years in New York, only 3 years as the closer. I know it feels like an eternity. WHIP is a career high for him, in New York. This is all in New York. Strikeouts, he has 60. His career high last year was 71. So we'll see if, he gets to that point. 17 walks, so he'll probably end up with close to a career high. His career high is 23 with the Yankees. His hits, he has a career high in any of his seasons. He's given up 52 hits. Last year, in pretty much 9 more innings, he gave up 51. The year prior was 45. His earned runs, 16 this year, 20 last year, 18 the year prior. However, this is a career year for saves with 29. He had 24 last year and 20 in 2022. Year. So it's interesting, Gary. It's very interesting. It's also interesting because he had 7 holds in 2022 and had 5 holds in 2023. Now, of course, Aroldis Chapman was in, the conversation, and Britton. So, I mean, this is technically, if I'm not mistaken, this is technically the first season where Clay Holmes is kind of out on his own. There's no one else that's really closing games. Am I wrong?
I mean, not really. We actually entertained the idea of Tommy Kahnle closing games. So if that tells you anything, how many people thought Tommy Kahnle would be closing games for the Yankees? No, yeah, nobody would even expect that to be on the table. So he showed up and we're like, oh, he's no fastball. So, I mean, what are we doing?
Last year was Clay Holmes' first year as the bona fide I am the closer season.
Okay.
And I mean, he had 24 saves and he was good, not great, I would say. And then 2022, Chapman had 9 saves. Holmes had 20. Okay, so I mean, Holmes has been the closer since 2021 when Chapman was the closer with 30. Chad Green had 6. I would say if there's any player that the Yankees are missing, like any player that you could take right now, like and have him be fully healthy, I think Loizaga would be like getting a stud reliever at the deadline.
I mean, it could be, but I mean, Johnny Lowe, I mean, he's been dealing with injuries. So I feel like even making him closer, he's like one of those guys right now. It's almost like Giancarlo Stanton. But
if you got
mound,
a healthy Johnny Lowe, if you were
just never
guaranteed a healthy Johnny Lowe,
yes, of course.
Is that not the best gift that you can have from a guy that's already out for the year? I mean, maybe I'm not thinking of.
No, you're absolutely right. But also the greatest gift that the Yankees could have ever been given is a healthy Giancarlo Stanton for these last few years. If he was healthy all the time, imagine the difference in role. Nobody would be talking about clogging DH. Just throw him at DH. We would love it. But you don't really have any expectation. Giancarlo could be gone in 2 weeks, and we're talking about a player of the past. And this is someone that if he's healthy in October, he's been great in terms of his play. He's awesome. Johnny Lowe, amazing, but he can't stay on the field. It's one thing after another. And unfortunately, we're talking about a season-ending injury. He never touched the mound. That's unfortunate. It just is. So, no, I totally agree with you. Johnny Lowe would be awesome to get a try and see what he can do, because I know it wouldn't have been 10 blown saves. He might have blown saves, and maybe you can argue he wasn't the right guy for the role, in large part because he's another sinker ball guy. But Jake, I guess where I'm at with it is the Yankees are just going to blow the hell out of saves. You just got to hope other teams are doing it too. And your offense needs to execute, not just out homer guys. You need to hit home runs in October. Aaron Judge needs to hit homers. Juan Soto still needs to hit homers in October. That stuff matters, okay? The winners are hitting home runs. But what else can you do for me? Can you, with a man on second and third base, can you chop a ball to second base and make sure we score a run with the infield playing back and get the runner from second to third and now hit a sac fly to make it 2-0? Can you do that for me, right? Jazz Chisholm has shown, I'll do that for you. Anthony Volpe, down at the bottom of the lineup, he's shown, I'll do that. I will do it. Juan Soto is now dropping down bunts. He's trying to bunt. He will do it. So, Jake, I guess where I'm at, this Yankees lineup is probably going to be the reason we either win or lose. I understand everyone's freaking out about the pitching, but I'm really here to argue the Yankees haven't won a World Series because they can't hit in October. That's my problem with this team. They cannot hit October pitching, and it's not necessarily about just getting hits. It's about what you do when you get to the base paths. Are you just waiting on a homer on a 3-run jack? If you are, which the last time we did anything in October, it was like Aaron Hicks hitting a bomb, right, off of Verlander. You're waiting on that to win a game? I'm not. I'm waiting on somebody to manufacture a run. That's what the Diamondbacks did last year. That's why they were better than the Dodgers. That's why they were better than the Braves. So if we can do that, I think we've got a shot. You might as well get your Pepto-Bismol and expect that Clay Holmes is going to blow games and just come to terms with it, because people are going to come to us going, can you believe you guys thought we could win with this closer? Yeah, I can, because everyone else's closer stinks too.
Well, that was a good way to wrap it up. It's been a long
Is it movie
episode.
time?
Well, we had to, I was looking at this movie that you're about to pick.
Oh, yeah, because I revealed. Yeah.
Well, we had to make sure that this episode didn't take as long as the movie, because it's close.
Yeah, this is a 90-minute episode, so it's going to take a long time to upload to Spotify for those of you who listen to audio only. But the movie, Jake, that I'm going with is Jake told me to let the audience know that I golfed with this individual. This is a Miles Teller film, Whiplash. Now, the reason, this is a 2014 movie. I love this movie, okay, first and foremost. But secondly, this movie was also still about jazz, which pertains back to Jazz Chisholm, who right now is our hottest baseball player on this team. So, yeah. No,
he's
been awesome.
Shout out to Gary. because you understood the assignment. See, like I can't do the puns and all that, like that stuff. Like I'm just like, oh, give him a bad movie. Okay, here's a bad movie. Or oh, give him a good movie. Here's a good movie.
You have to become a dad. That's how you unlock that.
Like achievement unlocked, dad. Oh, real quick, shout out to Gary. He said get good in this episode. That was a callback to an old
on
episode.
Accident, by the way. I said good because I didn't have another word to put in there, and it just so happened to work out as a pun. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
Of course. I mean, you've pointed out my wins, and you know, I wanted to point out yours because that was from like episode 40, maybe even further back, and I was just like, yeah, I just want them to get good. Like,
yeah,
I was like, but it was all meant to be a joke. Obviously, we like taking this seriously. We like taking this professionally. We have our stuff in there, although we haven't heard as many jamokes and jabronis from Gary as of late. But
especially considering the losing streak, I probably should unveil it. I'll come up with a new word.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah,
so
we're on a winning streak right now, so I'll come up with some positive words as well.
We're also 10 minutes away from tying Whiplash's runtime, so we're not going to do that. So we're just going to let you guys know we appreciate you. Be sure to drop Whiplash in the comments section below if you stuck around to this point. Really do appreciate that. By the way, anytime you drop that, it also helps out the algorithm, lets people know that you actually like what you're watching. So if you want us to keep growing, definitely goes a long way. And that's going to do it. We'll be back tomorrow, another 8 p.m. Eastern time start time in Texas. But that's going to do it for now. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Like this video.